Our program that we're going to talk about this morning is how to deal with unacceptable employee behavior. Let me ask you a question. How many people in this room have ever dealt with somebody that was unacceptable at work? Let me see a show of hands. Anybody have that? You know, it's a commonplace thing. I have found in my career that unacceptable people actually may be some of your best producers if you could ever earn their following. And that's a very important lesson to learn. Managers and supervisors have to earn people's following. They don't follow you voluntarily. I learned that, I guess, probably best from my background. As Julie said, I have some connection with professional sports. My first real job at age 17 was that of a pro athlete. I was a pro boxer and pro kickboxer. So I do come equipped to handle those difficult employees rather well. A good left hook at the right time doesn't always prove poorly. But I have found that, and I segue from that world to the real world, that you start beating up people, punching them out, knocking them out, kicking them around. Where do you end up going? To jail. That's exactly right. And in jail, you got to dance with people you don't want to dance with. So I had to make some changes very quickly. I had to learn something. What I learned was man masters nature not by force, but by understanding. And one of the most important things you as the leader have to do when you have a difficult person is understand where they're coming from. Difficult people don't believe they're being difficult. In most cases, they believe you're being difficult. There's a lack of communication. There's a breakdown in the system somewhere. So your job as the leader is to make certain they understand the realities of the workplace and help them get into it so they can succeed. Our program with how to deal with unacceptable employee behaviors focuses just on that. Unacceptable behavior. Far too often we attack people for who they are and not what they do. Who they are makes no difference. Realistically, we're not there to be buddies and friends at work when it's all said and done. Yeah, it's nice to work with people you feel comfortable with. But in reality, we don't have to be buddies and friends. Nobody's hired to pick out curtains and have barbecues with people. Nobody's hired to pick out the godparent of their child and have picnics and celebrations. Realistically, we're there to achieve goals and outcomes. Everybody contributes at some level. So realistically, when you're dealing with your difficult employees, what you want to be able to do is understand their motivation, why they may be doing it. In our program, we talk about that very extensively. As a matter of fact, the very first thing we do is define what a difficult employee really is. It may be shocking to understand that just because they don't show up to work, just because they don't meet deadlines, just because they don't do their work, just because they gossip at the water cooler, just because they do those things that aren't always productive, doesn't mean they're a difficult employee yet. The obligation is on the leadership side to start the process. In other words, you have to bring it to their attention that their behavior is unacceptable. How many people have kids? How many people have kids? Now let me ask you a question, because I really do believe we're all big grown-up kids at some level, right? We're just fighting over different toys once we get to the workplace. If your child does something wrong and you say nothing, what does that child have the right to believe? That it's okay. So actually I've sent a message because silence means consent. Silence means it's okay. And far too often we're so busy that we just forget. We expect people to understand this. We expect people to know. And you realize every day things change. And the world we live in today especially is constantly changing, rapidly changing. So the bottom line is we have to constantly bring it back to their attention that these things are either acceptable, reward them for what they do right, and we need to bring to their attention that it's unacceptable. In other words, punish what they're doing wrong. Punishment doesn't mean you're beating them up or you're taking things away from them or treating them poorly. As a matter of fact, most of those kind of punitive actions will create more controversy and more problems. Punishment simply means bringing to their attention that they're not getting a payoff for what they're doing. They're working too hard. How many people in this room feel like you work too hard and don't get the payoffs you want or deserve? Let me see a show of hands on that. I mean, let's just think about it. That's life today, isn't it? We're all working hard. I think hard work, like the old saying goes, hard work is rewarded. I don't believe that. I don't think hard work has ever been rewarded. I think, as a matter of fact, the graveyards are full of hard-working people that worked hard all their life and accomplished very little. I'm not into hard work. I'm into smart work. Focused effort. We push people, but we need to be pulling them along. We need to inspire them, not expect from them. When you're dealing with difficult people, you've got to understand. You can beat them into submission for a short period of time and they'll go right back to what they were doing. That's called compliance. How many people have ever experienced compliance? You talk to somebody about showing up late, for the last 2 weeks, and you talk to them and they go, okay, I didn't realize that. Thanks for telling me. I'll be on time from now on. And it goes for another week or two and they're just fine. And then after that, it goes right back to the way it was. That's one of the issues that we deal with. It's called compliance, short-term repair of the problem. What you want and what the program is here to provide are tips and strategies and techniques to gain commitment to a change in behavior, which means long-term changing of behavior. That's what we'll focus in on. One of the areas we need to start with is a good, clear definition of what a difficult employee is. And I'll give you a couple of tips today in our short time together. You can write this down if you'd like. A difficult employee is not a person who doesn't do the work that they're supposed to. A difficult employee requires a conversation with them first. We call it a coaching session. You need to talk to them. You need to bring it in and say, we need this behavior. We're getting this behavior down here. There's a performance gap. Did you realize or did you understand that that was happening? No, I had no idea. Because if you said nothing, what do they have the right to believe? Everything is just fine. What do you think they'll continue? Exactly what they're doing. Then they're going to look shocked when you bring it to their attention. Your job is to keep them informed. Let them know where they stand. Let them know how to succeed. And if they're failing, bring them back in line quickly. Because the longer you wait, the harder it gets. So we make this definition. You first have to speak with them about the deficiency. The second thing you have to do is agree that a deficiency exists. And this is probably the most important part of any dealing with a difficult employee, is gaining agreement that a problem actually exists. And I mean out of their mouth, the words have to come, yes, I agree. Not, well, I guess so. Well, I don't know, maybe according to you, but I don't know. But, they'll come up with all kinds of little excuses and alibis and what they believe to be reasons for their performance. But realistically, none of them are true reasons. They're alibis, they're excuses. Your job is to be able to handle those. So in the program, we'll actually give you ways of handling those little one-liners. Well, Joe does it and you don't talk about him because Joe's your buddy, right? You know those people. Am I right? Am I sounding like anybody that you've ever heard in a conversation? Well, no, the bottom line is you start talking about Joe, that's just a wrong thing to do. You need to look at them and go, well, I appreciate what you're saying and thank you for your candor, but I've always made it my practice, and we've worked together for a long time now, Jonathan. Well, and I've tried to do it this way, and if I ever don't, you let me know. But I would find it very difficult to discuss somebody else's performance with you like I'd find it incredibly unprofessional to discuss your performance with them. Knowing that I address things like that, would you agree with me that regardless of what the rest of the world does, it causes a problem when you're not here on time? Thank you. Gaining agreement. So with that in mind, why don't we go forward? What can we do to prevent this from happening in the future? Because that's the next step of getting a difficult person. They've got to come up with a mutual plan of action. Not your idea, not what you want to do. No, I think you should do this. And just, Jonathan, you better be getting this straight or boy, we're going to have some problems. It's, Jonathan, what do you think we could do to eliminate this? And let Jonathan come up with some solutions. And make that part of your plan of action. A mutual plan of action. Now, if Jonathan does